Good afternoon and welcome to another Warrior Creed live stream with me, the radical Majid Nawaz. And today, as should be on your screens right about now, we are discussing the topic Reform UK declares war on the Labour Party, and that is due to the by-election that is up and coming in Makerfield. To catch everybody up who is not a UK politics or UK domestic politics nerd, the news is that, of course, there is a leadership challenge against the Prime Minister and the Labour Party leader, Keir Starmer, because of his absolutely abysmal performance during the nationwide local elections that the Warrior Creed live stream has been reporting on for the last 2 weeks. That abysmal performance led to multiple resignations inside the Labour Party, eventually at senior cabinet level in the form of the Secretary of State for Health and Palantir poodle, Wes Streeting, who resigned from government and thereby instigated the leadership challenge against Keir Starmer. But the favourite was by a long shot, Labour Mayor for Greater Manchester, Andy Burnham, who, because he wasn't in Parliament, required a seat to stand in to get back into Westminster in order to challenge Keir Starmer for leadership. If he were to get that seat and if he were to win the by-election, he would easily beat Keir Starmer and Wes Streeting and all other rivals in an internal Labour leadership contest, which by default would mean, as leader of the Labour Party, the party that has the majority inside the House of Commons specifically, which is the legislative chamber, the majority party leader automatically by default therefore becomes Prime Minister. So Andy Burnham's route to the premiership for the Labour Party in the United Kingdom to replace Keir Starmer comes through the Makerfield by-election. If he doesn't win in Makerfield, he cannot win in the internal Labour Party leadership election. He first must become an MP. If he were to become an MP, he would easily beat all other contenders, including Keir Starmer, and would easily therefore become the Prime Minister because of the nature of our particular parliamentary system, which means that the leader of the party in the legislative chamber, and that is the House of Commons, automatically becomes Prime Minister, or constitutionally, and to be technically precise, is then invited by the monarch, currently King Charles III, to become Prime Minister of his government. And that's how it works. Now, the reason the stream today is called the Reform Party declares war on Labour is because in everything we just stated, Andy Burnham must win the Wakefield by-election in order to be able to challenge Keir Starmer for the Labour Party leadership. The problem he's got, it's actually quite funny. The problem he's got is that the constituency he's decided to stand in the last local elections, the Reform Party gained over 50% of the votes and every single council seat. So he's got to beat Reform, and they've just fielded a local candidate who was born in the constituency. Now, you've got to see the funny side to this. Wouldn't it be hilarious if Andy Burnham, after all this hype as the anticipated Messiah to come back in and lead Labour to victory, weren't to win his by-election because Reform, of all parties, not the Greens, but Reform, stopped him short before he was even able to start the race. You got to admit, it's quite funny. Everything we've just said is what this stream is about. We're going to bring the data for you. We're going to break down the data with all the polling, the latest polling data, as well as what the odds are on each candidate. And so that is what the stream is about. Stay tuned. It's going to get spicy. If Burnham doesn't win and Reform win, that's a political earthquake in and of itself. If Burnham does win, then that is also a political earthquake because it means almost certainly that Keir Starmer's premiership is over. So we're in a very interesting time here in UK domestic politics, which is why all of you should stay tuned, because we're going to break down for you all of the likely scenarios and how this transpires. But that's coming up after the opening credits. You're watching the Warrior Creed live stream with me, the Radical Majid Nawaz. Don't go anywhere. We'll be back right after this.
You are now about to witness the strength of street knowledge. Witness the Swings announcement brought to you in part by Warriors.
Damn, that shit was dope.
Welcome back to the Warrior Creed live stream with me, the radical Majid Nawaz. And as is on your screens, the topic today, Reform UK declares war on the Labour Party in the Makerfield by-election. We've introduced why this is so important, the Makerfield by-election, and we have provided the potential stakes of what could go on. Of course, Reform could beat Andy Burnham and thereby prematurely prevent his leadership challenge against Keir Starmer by preventing him from becoming an MP. That would be a catastrophic result for the Labour Party and a political earthquake in the favour of reform. However, if he were to win, Andy Burnham, if he were to win, of course, that in itself has consequences, because it would mean almost certainly he'd go on to beat Keir Starmer in an internal leadership race, and then therefore would become Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. So we're in a very sensitive time. The political cartoon for the stream today is on your screens now. That depicts Andy Burnham at the hospital bed of what is a Labour Party pillow on the face of a presumably Keir Starmer being suffocated to death by Burnham squeezing the pillow on his face while holding a lamp and being dressed as some form of savior, with the sun shining overhead as some sort of savior of the Labour Party. So that is the cartoon for today. You can see on your screens that is a cartoon by Morton Moreland. It will be in the Radical Dispatch tomorrow. And what we're going to spend the rest of this stream doing, Reform UK declares war on the Labour Party, is to break down for you exactly what the data is around all of this. Before we do, we just feel it is important to just acknowledge the we'll bring it up on your screens now. We believe it is important to acknowledge hopefully you can see on your screens. Here we are. Acknowledge the Chief Rabbi Sir Ephraim Mervis and his post. The murderous attack on the Islamic Center of San Diego was a horrific act of violent hatred and a devastating moment for the local community. I extend condolences to the families of the victims. I am acutely aware of the fear that this type of attack creates for Muslims, and that is because of the 3 killed in the suspected hate crime at a San Diego mosque. So we just begin with that acknowledgement before we carry on with the stream today. And let's start with the topic of the Makerfield-born Robert Kenyon standing up against the Labour candidate Andy Burnham. Just 1 second. There seems to be some issue with the stream. We're just fixing the problem. Okay, yep, that's on your screens now. Right, we're going to share the screen now. There we go. Okay, so the Reform Party has fielded Makerfield-born Robert Kenyon against the Labour's Andy Burnham, and they posted a campaign video for Robert Kenyon. Here is their social media post on the topic. You can see the Reform UK account there saying Makerfield was Andy Burnham's backup plan. For Robert Kenyon, it is his home. This battle will be David versus Goliath. So we're going to play the video for you. That's on your screens now, and you're going to see that this is the Reform campaign video for the Makerfield constituency.
If I was elected, I'd be the first person born in the I was born in Makerfield. If I was elected, I'd be the first person born in the constituency to become the MP. I don't think any MP that's ever stood in Makerfield was actually born in the area. I'm a plumber, gas engineer. I've done that for a long time. I did my apprenticeship when I was 18. I love being a plumber. I do enjoy it. It's hard, but I do enjoy it because I do take pride in my work. I don't know, it gets me a bit emotional sometimes thinking that there's a chance that I could be representing people in Parliament because it's a massive honour. And people will be thinking, hang on a minute, he serviced my boiler last week. Labour and probably the majority of the other parties have got career politicians, you know, they go to private school, to university, they get a job at a think tank or they're an assistant to an MP, and then before you know it, they're parachuted into somewhere they've never even visited to stand as an MP. Now, they might know the system, they might know how politics works, they might know Westminster, but they don't know the area or the people, you know. You could read a book about something, but you'll never understand it until you actually do it. For Andy Burnham, Makerfield will be a stepping stone, but for me, it's the only place I've ever wanted to represent. People in this area, this constituency, have been taken advantage of for far too long, and it's time to take a stand. The Makerfield constituency deserves a local champion. You have got a voice, make that voice heard on June the 18th in this Makerfield by-election, and go out and vote for Reform UK.
And there you can see the Reform Party video, which features the candidate that was born in the constituency, which clearly poses a threat to Andy Burnham, because as you can hopefully recognize from the campaign attack line, the candidate for the Reform Party is making clear that Andy Burnham is somebody that is using the constituency as a stepping stone to become the leader of the Labour Party and also the Prime Minister. Now, that in itself is probably true and is an accusation that may well be land in any potential campaign that is conducted by the Reform Party. The polls are also clear on a national level. You can see, let's see if that's on your screens now. Yep, that should be on your screens. You can see there how the Reform Party are going to approach this particular campaign. They've said, we have smashed the old two-party system. Only Reform can beat Labour. And there on your screens is a graphic demonstrating how Reform UK has a 12-point lead in the latest poll. Reform at 29%. And then, of course, the other two parties represented there at 17%. And this is really a bit of a threat to the Labour Party, because in the constituency of Makerfield, where the Labour Party is hoping to win in this by-election campaign, the Reform Party, as we've stated, has won every single seat in the local council elections, which causes a particular headache for the Labour Party, and as the Times newspaper describes, a particular or an uphill struggle for Andy Burnham and his hopes of winning in this constituency. So we're going to show you the Times headline here. Let's see if we can pull it up on the screen. Yep, that should be on your screens there. Hold on. There we are. And as is clear, the Times reports Andy Burnham faces an uphill struggle in Makerfield by-election. That's from the 18th of May in the Times. And it says, despite his personal popularity, this is the subheading, the Mayor of Greater Manchester may struggle to gain traction in a constituency where Reform UK has natural strength. And then quoting from the article, bear with us. Yep, that's still on your screens. The biggest barrier between Andy Burnham and number 10 is a smattering of towns between Liverpool and Manchester. His allies say the chances of him winning the Makerfield by-election are 45%. Looking solely at national polls, the likelihood of a Labour win would be far lower. This is by no means a safe seat. It has a majority of 5,039. A party in government has not won a by-election defending a seat with a majority this small in almost 40 years. The two by-elections Labour has already lost this parliament came from majorities of 14,696 in Runcorn and Helsby and 13,413 in Gorton and Denton, both comfortably double the buffer achieved by Josh Simons, the MP who was stepped down to make way for Burnham's run. Labour's vote share has been consistently 10 to 20 percentage points higher when Burnham is on the ballot. So it's looking difficult. It's not an easy challenge, but what's clear from the polling is that Burnham has a far higher chance of winning in that seat than the Labour Party has. So Burnham is more popular than Labour. But the Reform Party, when compared to Labour, is more popular. So in order of votes, Labour would get less votes than the Reform Party, but the Reform Party would get less votes than Andy Burnham. That's what the seat's looking like at the moment. And the independent reports on the 18th of May, a similar conclusion. Let's bring this up on your screens. Here we are. That should be there on your screens now. You can see it. Can Andy Burnham actually beat Reform in Makerfield to take on Starmer? Here's what the data shows. This is from the Independent on the 18th of May 2026. Speaking about the veteran chances, pollster Sir John Curtis told the Independent he'll be the first candidate who's trying to win a by-election on the basis that he wishes to replace the leader of the party that he's standing for. Now, that causes particular complications for Burnham, despite the fact that he's more popular as a sole individual candidate than the Reform Party. He's still going to have to run by admitting to the fact that he's seeking to depose his own party leader once he wins. Causes a bit of a conundrum for him in the campaign. But also on your screens now, you can see the Times reporting on the 18th of May. Reform swept the board in the 8 council wards up for election in Makerfield at the start of the month, winning 50% of the vote to Labour's 23%. And the Independent to carry on reporting from there. Again, that article's on your screens now, and we're just going to read from it. Let's see. Yep, there we are. Long seen as a Labour safe seat, Wigan's Makerfield has been in the party's hands since its creation in 1983. However, Mr. Simons won the seat by a majority of just 5,399 over Reform UK at the 2024 general election. Since then, Labour's polling has collapsed, while Reform's has surged. This month's local elections saw Mr. Farage's party win every council ward in the Makerfield constituency, securing around half the vote. Labour was left trailing behind, having secured little more than a quarter of the ballots. That really is a good summary of the problem that we are addressing here. And as we've said, the issue is that in Makerfield, the Labour Party is far less popular than the Reform Party. The Reform Party got 50% of the vote and took every single council seat. The Labour Party would lose in a straight-up election against Reform in the Makerfield by-elections. But Andy Burnham, as a person, does stand a chance of beating the Reform Party because it is Andy Burnham, not because it's the Labour Party. That is what the data is showing. This is the reason Reform put forward such a local candidate whose video we just showed you, because to beat the personality of Andy Burnham in that seat, they need somebody who is able to campaign on the fact that he is more authentic than the man who is seen as the authentic Labour representative of the North, otherwise dubbed as the King of the North, Andy Burnham. And so the Reform Party have put forward Robert Kenyon. We showed you his video. He was born and raised in the constituency, and their hope is that Robert Kenyon is able to bring that challenge to Andy Burnham and do away with the advantage that Burnham as a personality has by also being a personality in the region or from the region. So that is the Labour game plan. That is how they plan to win the seat and how they plan to challenge. That is the Reform game plan and how they plan to. Sorry, we got cut there, but we hope to be back right now. And we're going to bring you the visual depiction of that seat so that you can see how that translates into a graphic form. And again, remember what we said was that the Labour Party is less popular than the Reform Party. And this really depicts how and why that is. This is from the last local elections. It should be on your screens now. The Reform Party took every single council seat, which it should be very clear. All of the seat has turned turquoise, which really doesn't bode well for the Labour Party. And it does. This is really why Keir Starmer is in such trouble, because it is very difficult to regain or recover from a constituency that has gone so completely one way. That is the Makerfield constituency on your screens now. That turquoise color is the color of the Reform Party. They have absolutely conquered that constituency. What Labour is hoping, as we've said, is that Andy Burnham as a personality turns it around for them, as opposed to Labour as the party, because the polls indicate that very clearly. Labour as a party have very little chance of winning in that seat. Only Burnham can do it. He is their last hope. And of course, that's why Reform put forward the local candidate that they did. Now on your screens again, reported by The Times, is another internal Labour opinion, just to make it clear that what we're saying is even a majority of Labour members at 53% thought that the greatest threat to the party came from losing votes to Reform, compared with 15% who saw the Greens as the biggest threat. So that is something that is shared by party members, that Reform is a bigger threat to their chances. And this is why, once again, this is how did Makerfield vote at the local election. Data of the results from Wigan Council show the scale of Reform's gains in Makerfield and the surrounding area. Labour kept control of the council but lost all 22 seats it was defending. Hoover over or tap the map to find out more. Of course, this isn't something we're going to do on the live stream, but that is an interactive map. We will be posting this map again in tomorrow's Radical Dispatch. That really does summarize the war that the Reform Party has taken to Labour. Now, in the last couple of streams here on the Warrior Creed, we explained how the real threat in the north to the Labour Party was, in fact, the Brexit voting working class vote, and that's a vote that is loyal to Nigel Farage. They voted for Farage during the Brexit years, and they lent their vote back to the Labour Party, though they used to be originally Labour Party voters. They lent their vote back to the Labour Party in the last general election. Keir Starmer was able to win them back, and they rebelled against the Conservatives and Boris Johnson. And it is that vote that Keir Starmer has once again lost in the north and in Wales. It is the Brexit voting working class vote that, instead of going for Labour, they have gone for Reform. And this by-election is and the map we just showed you is a visual depiction of that. The only chance Labour has is with Burnham. And this brings us to the next part of the stream today. On your screens, you should see the subheading right about now, part 2. We've called it Reform beats Labour, but not Andy Burnham. You can see on your screens now that we're going to also talk through a graph in the Times. This is from the 19th of May. Reform's lead may be shrinking. So that's on a national level. The Reform Party is still way ahead, but their lead is decreasing as opposed to increasing. That's not too bad because they're still way ahead. But in the context of the topic at the moment, which is again above the graph, you can see that Reform Party does beat Labour, but it doesn't beat Andy Burnham. Why? Well, this is what we're going to go into now. You can see from the Radical Dispatch, we've written Andy Burnham is the current front runner to win the Makerfield by-election, with prediction markets assigning him a 57.5% to 62% probability of victory as of time of writing, which is mid-May 2026. Again, that's from The Independent. And so we're going to just break down quickly by showing you this graphic in The Independent, what you're seeing. You're seeing a graphic that depicts the fact that out of all of the Labour politicians, the public, when asked, have a clear favourite in Andy Burnham. It really is that Burnham is somebody that is uniquely popular, more so by far than his party brand, the Labour Party. Only Burnham can win in Makerfield, but of course, with every single council seat going Reform, the real question is whether the challenger in the Reform Party, being born in the constituency seat as he is, whether Robert Kenyon can actually surprise everybody. But it's going to be a very, very tense race. Now, Robert Kenyon is, again, in terms of odds, he's the primary challenger, but the markets are pricing currently his chances at 29 to 39%. But, you know, don't forget, that's 29 to 39% for Reform's Robert Kenyon against the 57 to 62% for Andy Burnham in the markets pricing, or the predictability in the betting odds. But don't forget, having heard what we've just said there, Reform did get 50.4% of the vote in the last local elections. So that is, it's still a very, very unique powder keg of a by-election. Polling does suggest that the Labour Party has a 67% chance of winning only if Burnham stands, compared with, and this is a important point, compared with a 0% chance of winning if Andy Burnham doesn't stand. That again is reported by The Independent in the 18th of May, and that's yesterday's Independent, which should be on your screens now. Can Andy Burnham actually beat Reform in Makerfield to take on Starmer? Here's what the data shows. We're just going to read that for you. It says a recent forecast by Survation would support this assessment, with the polling group finding that Labour has a 67% chance of winning the seat with the Greater Manchester Mayor as candidate, compared to a 0% chance without. Mr. Burnham is recorded as the UK's most popular politician by pollsters, YouGov, with 35% of people having a positive opinion of him. By contrast, Keir Starmer's popularity sits at 19% and Mr. Streeting's at just 12%. So that is the support for the statement we just made, that without Burnham, the Labour Party has 0% chance of succeeding in Makerfield. That's according to a YouGov poll. It is clear that Burnham is the only hope for the Labour Party. Starmer himself, were Burnham to win, is incredibly, incredibly unpopular. It is pretty much over for Starmer. And that brings us to the next section of the stream, and that is Starmer's approval rating. So far, we've heard that the Reform candidate is local, born and raised. Reform took 50% of the vote in the last election, local elections just gone, and have therefore a strong chance of upsetting the Labour incumbent. However, Labour, though they would lose to Reform, if Andy Burnham specifically ran, he would win, but they have a 0 chance of winning without Andy Burnham. Right? Now, part 3, Starmer's approval. Well, Starmer's rating, as we said, as you can see there on your screens now from last week's Radical Dispatch, Prime Minister Starmer is doomed. That is pretty much what's happened. Starmer is doomed. There is the Times today. Keir Starmer approval rating today, polls and popularity tracked. We'll just read it for you. The bold at the bottom of that quote: yet in just a few months, Starmer's popularity plummeted, making him less popular than Farage, the Lib Dem leader Sir Ed Davey, and Sunak's successor Kemi Badenoch. Starmer's approval ratings are there in the red line on the screen for you now, and you can see he's at the bottom at minus 42%. It is an abysmal rating for Keir Starmer. And even though for the public, Nigel Farage is at minus 21%, that is obviously when you compare all of the party voters here in terms of who they want as prime minister, as opposed to who's going to win in each constituency. Don't forget, in the constituency we're talking about, Reform got over 50% of the vote. This is a national poll here. So nationally, Keir Starmer is at minus 42%. His approval rating is abysmal, and it is seen as pretty much the end for Keir Starmer. It's also important to remember that recent history would suggest that Starmer is on borrowed time. The Times itself, from that same article, just to read a quote from you from there, David Cameron, it says, who was in charge between 2010 and 2016, was the last leader to complete a full term, the last prime minister of the UK to complete a full term. After he stepped down, the premierships of Theresa May, Boris Johnson, Sunak, and most notably Liz Truss were all cut short due to various scandals and economic turmoil. The Labour leader has yet to reach 2 years in office, that's Starmer now, and his position is already under threat. So the UK has a particularly turbulent time with prime ministers at the moment. And as the Times reported there, we just read for you, that the last PM that completed a full term of office was David Cameron. But that was 4 PMs ago. We're now in our 5th PM, and he doesn't look like he's going to complete a full term in office, so he'd become the 6th. Now, that's quite funny. Keep in mind, of course, the balkanization of British politics is something relatively recent. I mean, it's thankfully not like Pakistan yet, where since that country's founding in 1947, not a single PM has completed a single term in office. So we're not quite there yet, but it is looking like it's heading that way. Now, Starmer is also losing support from Labour voters. We're going to show you now the visual depiction of that on your screens. Again, this is from the Times, 19th of May, reading it for you. Outside of the unrest from MPs, Starmer is losing support from 2024 Labour voters who are getting increasingly unhappy with his position as Prime Minister. 48% of those who backed the party in the last general election had an unfavourable opinion of the party leader. And that is the visual depiction of that. You can see there the two graphs, losing faith, they're called. The top one is favourable, and then you've got an unfavourable one just underneath that, and then you've got the don't knows underneath them, as you can now see scrolling up on your screens. So if you just focus for a moment on the favourable versus unfavourable, you can see the red graph under favourable, the top one, Labour is at 46%. That's 46% of Labour voters who have a favourable view of Keir Starmer. However, when compared to the middle graph, the unfavourable one, look at the red line, the red graph again, and you see that 48% of Labour Party voters have an unfavourable view of their own party leader, the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer. This is really why it's over for Starmer. His own voters, more of his own voters, do not have a favourable view of him than do. And that is a problem for any leader in a democracy. It means they need to replace him very soon so that any future election they go into, they don't go into it with such an unpopular leader. Keep in mind, as the Times reports on the 19th of May, the number of resignations from his government has now risen to 18. So clearly, they've got an unpopular prime minister, but to replace him, they need one man to get into Westminster, and that is Andy Burnham. Only that man can win in the by-election in Makerfield, because when the local elections happened in that seat, it's still hilarious. The Reform Party got 50% of the vote. And by polling, Reform would beat the Labour Party in Makerfield, and the Labour Party would have zero chances of success in the Makerfield constituency to beat Reform. Only Andy Burnham has any chance, according to opinion polling, of beating the Reform Party in the Makerfield constituency, and not because he's Labour, but because he's Andy Burnham. It is a really, really funny situation, but Burnham is the front runner, and according to polling, if he were to win in Makerfield, he would easily beat every other candidate in the internal Labour Party elections. That's on your screens now. Burnham is the front runner. The Times reports 19th of May headline, Keir Starmer latest, PM rejects calls to set out timetable for departure. If Burnham won, Keir Starmer's still saying that he wouldn't stand down. There would have to be an internal leadership. We'll just read that for you. Starmer rejected calls to set out a timetable to stand down if Burnham won the Makerfield, saying, I'm not going to do that. Look at the bottom of the quote in bold, I do want to fight the next election. That's from Starmer. But polling indicates that Burnham beats Starmer if there were to be such an internal race. Again, from the Times, over half, that's 53%, said that a new leader should take Labour in a more left-wing direction, compared with 19% who thought it should be more centrist. That clearly favours Burnham. The YouGov survey, again from the Times, the YouGov survey found that Burnham would win 59% of the membership vote against 37% who would back the Prime Minister Keir Starmer. And there's the visual depiction of it. Burnham v Starmer. Andy Burnham easily at 59% beats Keir Starmer. It's why Burnham needs to win in Makerfield. Burnham also beats Wes Streeting. Again, on your screens, you can see from the Times, the poll also shows that Burnham, who will need to win the Makerfield by-election to return to Parliament, would beat the former Health Secretary Wes Streeting by 80% to 10%. Again, Wes Streeting, as we said in last week's and the week before's live stream, Wes Streeting would not be the right choice for the Labour Party. He is the least popular among the three. You can see here that even Keir Starmer beats Wes Streeting. That's now on your screens. Keir Starmer gets 65% against Wes Streeting. And last week's Radical Dispatch reported that from GB News, where we said if Wes Streeting was to succeed Starmer, I think he would just be a Starmer 2.0. You can see all of that again in the written version of this stream for the Radical Dispatch. But clearly that polling making it abundantly clear that the only chance the Labour Party has is to get Andy Burnham into Parliament by winning in Makerfield and then get him into the leadership of the Labour Party. It's a two-step process, and the only thing that could really mess it up for them is the Reform Party, having got 50% of that vote in that constituency in the last local elections. That, by the way, that by-election is expected early summer 2026, perhaps around June the 18th as a possible date. Now, there are some splitters that could ruin what we've just laid out for you. Let's start with the Lib Dems and the Greens. They, of course, are also fielding candidates. They could split the Burnham vote, though, of course, they would split the Labour vote. They would be unlikely to split the personalised vote for Andy Burnham. Nevertheless, we'll report on it for you. That's on your screens now. Lib Dems and Greens. The Times reports 18th of May. Reform and Labour are not the only parties standing. Of course, 23% of the vote at the general election went to other parties, split equally between parties on the left and the right. One of Burnham's main tasks will be to squeeze the Liberal Democrats and Green half of that vote. A Lib Dem source said the party was standing a candidate and fighting for every vote. Despite pressure from some in the party, the same is true of the Greens. Labour strategists acknowledge there will be some constituents too hardened. They point to the by-election in Runcorn and Helsby last May, where after an aggressive squeeze operation, Labour lost by 6 votes, while the Liberal Democrats and Greens earned a combined 3,256 without much campaigning to speak of. So there is a risk of the vote splitting. The Independent also reports the Greens stormed to victory in Gorton and Denton with 41% of the vote to Reform's 29% and Labour's 25%. However, a poll carried out by Survation after the event found that if Mr Burnham had been Labour's candidate, it would have taken 47%, leaving the Greens on 25%. Now, what you've just heard there is, again, support for the idea that only Burnham can win here. If you think back to the Gorton and Denton by-election, where the Greens won for the first time and returned an MP to Westminster, and that was the huge upset there that the Greens snatched a seat from a Labour incumbent. That was the Gorton and Denton by-election. What that polling just revealed that we just read out for you from the Independent yesterday was that if Andy Burnham had stood in Gorton and Denton, he would have beaten the Greens. Without Andy Burnham, the election happened and the Greens won. So that is the Andy Burnham effect. It would have applied to Gorton and Denton. The Labour Party are hoping that it now applies in Makerfield, because again, remember the polling we cited, without Burnham, Labour have a 0% chance of winning. And also remember that the Reform Party got 50% of the vote. So their candidate might still surprise everybody. But that is why it's so exciting and interesting to watch. So would the Greens be likely to split the vote in the Makerfield by-election against Labour? Yes, unless Andy Burnham is the front runner. So it is unlikely, therefore, because Andy Burnham is declaring his hat, it is unlikely that the Greens would take too much of a splitting of the vote from him. Let's also remember it's not just the Greens that are, in this context, the splitters, but also, curiously enough, in this context of Makerfield, the Tories are also vote splitters. And that is why we began this stream by showing you the graphic of Farage saying, of Reform Party, saying that only Reform can beat Labour. It's true. In this seat in Makerfield, the Tories are the splitters. They're not the contenders. That's on your screens now. As the Times has reported, 18th of May, 2026. We'll just read that for you from the Times. And it says, however, helpfully for Burnham, Reform is not immune to vote splitting either. The Conservatives won 11% of the vote at the general election and about the same at the local elections. They will also be fielding a candidate, despite calls for some senior figures in a party to step back. The upstart Restore Party Britain, founded by the former Reform MP Rupert Lowe, will also take votes that would otherwise comfortably have been in Farage's camp. And that is the other part. The left-wing media is having a field day. This brings us to the final part here. As you can see in the left-wing blog, The Canary, Restore Britain is setting sights on splitting Reform's vote in Makerfield. They've said, as we've reported, Restore has already prevented Reform from winning by opposing them, specifically in the Norfolk local elections. Rupert Lowe's post is on your screens. Ladbrokes have Restore Britain as a third favourite in Makerfield, ahead of the Greens, Tories and the Lib Dems. Interesting. And the Canary continues to report, we suspect most of their votes will come from people who get Reform UK and Restore Britain mixed up. And that is the strategy, really. What the Labour Party is hoping is that Burnham is their secret weapon. And to mitigate the threat of Reform, they're hoping for a strong performance by the Tories and by Restore Britain, which is Rupert Lowe's party of splitters. And so, as everybody can see from this stream, the real race is actually between the Reform Party and the Labour Party. All of the others contending are taking votes on the right wing. All of the others contending are taking votes from the Reform Party, whereas the Greens, even by running a candidate, will not take votes from Andy Burnham, because they would take votes from the Labour Party, but the Labour Party would lose in any race regardless. However, Andy Burnham would not lose in any race. He would win because he has a personal vote, and the Greens would not take that personal vote for him, as the polling indicated that they even wouldn't have taken it from him if he had run in the Gorton and Denton by-election. So the left-wing vote in Makerfield, this upcoming local election, will not be affected by splitters, even if they field a candidate, that the Greens field a candidate, because Burnham's personal vote mitigates against that. Whereas on the populist right, the vote would be split by the Conservatives and the Rupert Lowe's Restore Party fielding candidates, because the Reform Party candidate doesn't have that Andy Burnham mitigation against bleeding votes, unless he can build it in this specific campaign. But at short notice to build a brand as large as the Mayor of Manchester's is difficult to compete with. So the right-wing parties will split the Reform vote. The Green Party will not split the Andy Burnham vote. They would have split a Labour vote, but they will not split the Andy Burnham vote. So really, if you're talking about splitters, the real danger is in the Conservative candidate and the Restore Britain candidate for the Reform Party. And really, if the Restore Britain Party and Rupert Lowe did concern themselves with the country, and knowing they have no chance of winning in this seat, they would not field a candidate. But that's clearly not what's going to happen. So it is fair in this context to label both the Tory vote and the Restore Rupert Lowe vote as the splitter vote, and as the vote that is likely to enable Andy Burnham as Prime Minister of this country and enable the Labour Party. Those splitters will be helping the Labour Party. That is simply the arithmetic. We've demonstrated it all with the data. And so it's not opinion. The polling data, the betting odds, everything backs this up. Only Andy Burnham can win the seat. If Andy Burnham runs, the Greens will not take votes for him. If Labour ran, the Greens would take votes from the Labour Party and Labour would have a 0% chance of success. So Andy Burnham trumps all other votes on the left and even beats the Reform Party because he has a personal vote. The Reform candidate starts with positive grounds, with 50% of the constituency's vote going to the Reform Party and every single council seat turning to Reform in the last local elections, but he's up against the Burnham brand. His second challenge are the splitters. And those splitters, the data has proven, and we've shown it over the course of this stream, will take votes from the Reform Party. The Tories will take votes and Rupert Lowe will take votes as well, but mainly the Tories will take votes. And if they had sense, they would recognize that Burnham's vote will not be split, but the right-wing vote will be split, and they will do everything within their power to prevent a new and refreshed Labour Prime Minister in the form of Andy Burnham, but they won't. They will field a candidate. But that will demonstrate to the voters generally in any future general election not to split the vote. The voters, and that's the only solution in this context, the voters need to become mature. They need to start voting tactically. They need to start realizing that they only ever lend their votes to any political party and therefore start voting tactically to make sure that what they really care about, for example, if they don't want the continuation of a Labour government, they would vote tactically. And even if they were Tory voters, they'd recognise that only Reform can win here. But, that's a conversation for voters to have. And whether or not that happens is unlikely in this election. But if it does, if it does end up that the right-wing vote has been split by the Tories and Restore against Reform, that is something that voters should keep in mind going forward. That's all we've got time for today's stream. We'll be back next week for the regular Warrior Creed live stream. And you can clearly see here, hopefully, what we've described there with the data, what's likely to happen in Makerfield, while at the same time, keeping Reform in the game is also very much on point because they did actually get 50% of the vote. So they still are in the game, even if the big beast Andy Burnham descends on that seat. Everything's still left to fight for. We'll be back next week with the Warrior Creed live stream. But until then, thank you for your time. You've been listening to the Radical Maajid Nawaz.
You are now about to witness the strength of street knowledge. Witness the strength. Street knowledge. Street knowledge.
Terrorize the jam like troops in Pakistan.
Street knowledge. Street knowledge. Quick service announcement brought to you in part by Warriors.